Of 8 o'clock, I am Rishabh Gulati, and we are going straight across to The Hague, where we are getting latest information, an exclusive report which has been filed in the latest Hague dispatch. Yesterday, we told you about the panic in Islamabad and how they plan to use a 1999 case in which the International Court of Justice had ruled in India's favor regarding its non-jurisdiction. Today, we reveal into the public domain for the first time how Pakistan has gone to the extent of modifying in secret its treaty ties with the United Nations that govern the International Court of Justice. It has weakened and diluted these ties to specifically save itself on the Jadhav case. Ashish Singh, my colleague, is there in The Hague, where he's outside the ICJ, where he'll be reporting with us in just a few seconds. Ridangshu, my colleague, meanwhile, standing by with that report and the news break. Madhav, right across to you.
Well, yes, certainly, of course, the first and the biggest update, that we've been bringing is really Pakistan and its own stance that it has taken, Rishabh, on the 29th of March, exposing very clearly the fact that how Pakistan has changed the very, nature of its owning, has very clearly at some level or the other removed security from that entire ambit of issues on which it will be engaging with the United Nations. Now, this is a completely unilateral measure, perhaps a measure even before the actual verdict was announced as far as Kulbhushan Jadhav is concerned, and perhaps Pakistan was attempting to preempt this very fact. But by doing this, has Pakistan not jeopardized its own stance where it seeks to internationalize each and every aspect which pertains to security when it comes to India? Now what will happen here on? That's going to be the important question that one will have to see, where Pakistan has clearly been extremely duplicitous in this approaching of the International Court of Justice. Of course, we have seen what commentators have said, but by India approaching the International Court of Justice, one thing that we have very clearly done is establish the role of Pakistan vis-a-vis this entire matter. But we must remember, at the end of the day, Pakistan is also a signatory as far as the entire India and Pakistan own bilateral agreements are concerned, and clearly this is a violation of even that. So how far will India be able to push its case legally needs to be looked at.
Now here's the perspective that you're seeing on your screens, and I'm going to ask my producers to keep these graphics there on your screens that will be explaining what was happening and what Pakistan did. The move has happened on March the 29th, when Pakistan very quietly changed the terms and conditions, diluting the terms and conditions in its ratification of the International Court of Justice. We'll get those graphics back on your screens. Very quietly, Pakistan removed internal and national security issues on March 29th from the ICJ ambit. The attempt by Pakistan was very clear to ensure that its forthcoming plot on Jadhav would thereby give it some legal cover. So there you see it on your screens. On March 29th, it withdraws domestic and national security issues, does it itself, from the ICJ's jurisdiction. Then on May 9th, after India's quick approach after the sentencing of Jadhav, the ICJ gives a stay, and this is now going to become the premise. Now the big issue in all of this for Pakistan, and why it is UN harakiri for them, is that this is a country that has based everything it has done on Kashmir by harking back to UN resolutions. This is a country whose representatives, including the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, go year after year to the United Nations and talk about Kashmir. This is Pakistan distancing itself from the very same United Nations and the very same rules and regulations that govern UN practice leading with the ICJ. Several people joining us on the broadcast, and I'm trying to get in my colleague Ashish, who's in The Hague. He's the only Indian reporter there outside the ICJ with details, with the information on this. Quickly across to Madhav first. Madhav, there is a larger issue in this case on what is happening with Pakistan diluting its own UN resolutions.
Oh yes, of course. There are several important aspects. Pakistan perhaps has, in a sense, we must say, Rishabh, perhaps shot itself in the foot. It has drastically changed the stance that it has had for several decades now particularly when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir. And thereby Pakistan making this switch at the level of the United Nations perhaps is something that that India may, in the short term may have an issue with, but in the long term, clearly, of course, the demands that Pakistan has traditionally been making, India will now get a chance to hit back at it and hit back legally, because that's really where it would count.
Okay, diluting the UN approach, this is something that did not even happen in the Shimla agreement when it came to Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Ashish Singh joining us on the broadcast from The Hague. Ashish, big developments are taking place. We now are aware of a March 29th Pakistan move to really distance itself from the ICJ. Ashish.
Well, that's right, Rishabh.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Rishabh, this is basically certainly in addition to the bilateral agreements and the including the recent one that took place just a decade ago, from Shimla agreement to agreement. All these things would be discussed by the Pakistan and by the Indian side on Monday. I'm told that once the Pakistani side is given agreement from 10 to 11:30 on Monday morning, the first argument would be oral observation would be made by the Pakistani side, and once that is done, the Indian government would be first. Pakistani side, I'm told, would be have a slightly upper edge as far as the entire provisional sharing is concerned. Remember, I would like to inform our viewers that this is not just for the entire verdict would be out on Monday. It is a provisional verdict that would be out.
Okay, so let's break it down for our viewers. Let's break it down for our viewers. We are expecting, if I'm correct, Ashish, 1.5 hours that are going to be given to each of the legal teams. First, the legal team from India will be presenting its case before the ICJ. That's going to happen roughly at about 1:30 p.m. India time. Then we are expecting Pakistan to present its legal defense, whatever it can come up with. That's expected to happen at around 6:30 p.m. India time, from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. NewsX will be telecasting the ICJ hearings live right here on this channel. You'll be able to see the developments going on inside India's legal team, which has thus far been led by Harish Salve, making its case live right here on this channel, Ashish. And of course, you're saying that we are expecting something provisional, not the final verdict, of course, on Monday.
That's right, Rishabh. Only the provisional verdict would be out. In fact, I was speaking to the officials of the registrar of the International Court of Justice here at The Hague, and what they told me is that the final verdict would obviously take 2 months. It's not going to deliver the final verdict on Kulbhushan Jadhav on Monday. But yes, there will be at least the roadmap that would be decided by the ICJ, and it will be certainly fully bound by Pakistan. They will have to adhere to exactly what the ICJ
Ashish, Ashish, just stay with me, and I'm trying to get this into perspective over here. Several reactions have come in on this story also, and we're going to play them out. Madhav, let's try to work through this. The sole focus of India here is to principally get consular access, because as soon as we have consular access, which means an Indian representative from the Indian High Commission gets to meet with Jadhav, and for the first time, the full story, the true story of what happened to him gets out into the public.
Well, yes, that's where the argument really comes in, Rishabh, because clearly at the end of the day, Pakistan would perhaps go ahead, and Pakistan's argument may be that this falls under the ambit of this issue of pertaining to security. But clearly, whereas India's perspective is completely different, when it comes to an Indian citizen, particularly a person who has served as an officer, no less, he is of course being kidnapped from another country is the stand of India. How can consular access not be allowed? That's going to be the question that India will pose, and whether it's a Vienna Convention or whether it comes to, in fact, bilateral agreements, it's a violation of all of those agreements. And these 16 times, a record 16 times perhaps, I don't know if consular access has been sought so many times in such a short span of time for any other individual in any other country in the world. But clearly, of course, India making those requests on record, time and again approaching the Foreign Office of Pakistan. All of those details, all of that data will be presented before the International Court of Justice, and India certainly hopes that its case will be heard positively at The Hague.
And like I said, we'll be live at 1:30 p.m. on Monday, 6:30 p.m. on Monday evening. You'll be watching the live telecast of those hearings inside the courtroom right here on NewsX. We are the only channel that is ensuring that this case is not muddied up in the waters. We are the only one to get you all these inside stories of what Pakistan is up to, so that you have a clear idea of what to expect come Monday, which will be by far the biggest fight India's ever had in the international legal domain to get justice for an Indian. Reactions coming in. Let's listen to them. Then we go live to The Hague, where Ashish is standing by.
International pressure that would come on Pakistan is likely to make them refrain from taking coercive steps, steps which are in violation of what the ICJ has said. So I think that they would wait and watch and see how the ICJ goes about it. I feel that the chances are very great, and if the international community comes down and gives the moral sanction, then that itself should help.
This country would be happy if we can be saved. But let us see, let it be argued. There are jurisdictional issues also. But as a countryman, I would like to see him saved.
NewsX reports from The Hague.
For the first time, the Indian government has dragged Pakistan in an international court.
Only channel at the ICJ headquarters.
International International Court of Justice. Right behind me is the place that would decide the future course of India-Pakistan relations.
Live from Ground Zero.
So stay tuned to NewsX, the only Indian channel reporting live from Peace Palace, as I, Ashish Singh, bring you latest, fastest and minute-to-minute updates from The Hague.
NewsX at The Hague.
And we are picking this up as the big debate. The Pakistan-UN harakiri, a secret move on March 29th to dilute its own commitment to the ICJ to save itself. Will it be able to? That's the debate. 9:30 p.m. Ashish Singh will be joining us live from The Hague, and from Rotterdam, we are getting a voice of the Indian-Netherlands Union over there, so that you get a perspective of how Indian expats living in Netherlands are viewing this case as well. That's coming up in just over an hour and a half from now. Meanwhile, other breaking developments coming in later this evening, where we've accessed a copy of the full intelligence dossier that has been put out by the US State Select Committee on India and Pakistan, where the blame has squarely been put on Pakistan for rising India-Pakistan tensions. Ridangshu, my colleague, standing by with that copy. Go ahead, Ridangshu.
Thanks indeed, Rishabh. Yes, indeed, in my hands I have an exclusive copy of that critical and damning US report here. It's a statement and a report which has been filed by the US Senate Select Committee on Intelligence here, and it really has some quite damning findings when it comes to Pakistan here. This is the operative part, an entire section on Indo-Pakistan relations, and I'm reading out verbatim, Rishabh. Relations between India and Pakistan remain tense following two major terror attacks in 2016 by militants crossing into India from Pakistan. That's indictment number 1. They might deteriorate further in 2017, especially in the event of another high-profile terror attack that New Delhi attributes to originating or receiving assistance from Pakistan. That's indictment number 2. Islamabad's failure to curb support to anti-India militants and New Delhi's growing intolerance of this policy is responsible for along with a perceived lack of progress in Pakistan's investigations into the 2016 Pathankot cross-border attack, has set the stage for a deterioration of bilateral relations. That's indictment number 3 and 4. Increasing number of firefights along the line of control might further risk unintended escalation between these two nuclear-armed neighbors. Easing heightened Indo-Pakistan tensions will hinge on a sharp and sustained reduction of cross-border terror attacks by groups based in Pakistan and progress in the Pathankot investigations. Absolutely, Rishabh.
Right.
No stones left unturned in blaming Pakistan and putting the onus of normalizing ties purely on Nawaz Sharif and Qamar Bajwa.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ridangshu, for that news break and putting into perspective for us. We'll move on to our big political story of the day coming up next, which is our debate at the top of 9 o'clock. It's a huge setback for Congress.